Okay, so let's talk about how ionic bonds form. And so, what you can see here, let me move my little head here, is first ions have to form in order for the ionic bond to form. And there's two types of ions. So in sodium, for example, we know sodium, it has 11 protons in the middle and typically has 11 electrons, right? Two in the first energy level, and then eight, and then 11, right? Or the one and one with one valence electron, right? Adding all these up to 11. Now, in order for sodium to have a full valence shell, it needs 7 additional electrons. Or another option is that it can actually get rid of this valence electron, this one lonely valence electron. It can get rid of it. It can give it to another atom. And then the result is that it will have a full valence shell. If this next energy level, the second energy level, becomes the valence shell. And so this is what we call a cation. And so I like to remember cation because they're positively charged. Get it? Cat and pause. You can make the connection. Okay, so that's an easy way to remember it. So cations are positively charged because the sodium or the atom is getting rid of one negatively charged particle, the electron, and then it becomes positively charged because now it has more protons than electrons. So for example, in a neutral sodium atom, it would have 11 protons and 11 electrons, right? In this example, it got rid of one of its electrons, and so now it only has 10. So if we add all this up, it has 10 positive particles and 10 negative particles. And so that gives us an overall charge of 1 plus. And so it's going to become a cation. So let's look over here at chlorine. Chlorine has 7 valence electrons, and so it can actually steal one of those electrons or just take one of the extra electrons from sodium, um, and then it's going to have a full valence shell. And what we call this is an anion. So an, usually it means negative, like anaerobic, and think of other things with the prefix an. I'm trying to think of something right now. I can't think of anything, but an means negative, right? So negatively charged particle because that now has more electrons than protons. So for example, typically chlorine atom has 17 protons and 17 electrons. In this case, so it gained an extra electron, it's going to, and it's going to have 18 electrons, and so now it has a 1 minus charge. And so once this happens and they become ions, let's look at what happens. Ignore all that stuff at the bottom of the screen. Now we have 1 plus over here and a 1 minus charge. And what do we know about things that are oppositely attracted to each other, right? Now they are going to be oh my gosh, what am I saying? What do we know about things that have opposite charges is that they are attracted to each other. And so now we have this 1 plus particle and this 1 minus, and they're attracted to each other. I couldn't show them coming closer to each other, so I just drew these circles. And they're going to actually stick to each other because they're attracted to each other, basically like magnets, and that is what we call our ionic bond. And this is a really strong attraction. So imagine two really strong magnets. If you've ever had like little tiny magnets that are super duper strong, you know they can be really hard to get apart. So you can kind of think of an ionic bond like that. All right. So if we look at something like magnesium, magnesium has 2 valence electrons, but it's the same exact thing. It can get rid of those 2 valence electrons and it becomes Mg2 plus. Now it's a magnesium ion. So notice everything in group 1 actually becomes a 1 plus when it becomes an ion. Everything in group 2 becomes 2 plus, right, because it gets rid of those 2 valence electrons and becomes positively charged. If we skip over the transition metals, right, and we go over to group 15, 16, and 17, we see that everything in group 15, it has 5 valence electrons, right? So we know they need 3 more. So they're going to gain 3 more from somewhere else, become 3 minus, negatively charged anion. Oxygen only needs 2 additional electrons, so if it gains those 2 additional electrons, it becomes 2 minus charge, so everything in group 16. In group 17 only needs 1 additional electron,